Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to our very first live stream of 2023 with our friends over at Forestreet. I shall introduce you to the man who's going to be demoing Forestreet, Mr. Ryan Brown, any second now. But before we do, just give everyone a couple of minutes to join who maybe want to join, and give a quick overview of what we do over at procurementsoftware.site if you haven't come across us before and this demo tickled your fancy. So we are essentially a directory website of procurement technology companies where we focus and shine a light on best of breed innovative solutions that are out there that usually don't get the press and airtime in a lot of other both conferences and publications and research houses. We are a completely free website to use. We don't have any sponsored insertions other than those that we mark as such with any feature upgrades that we might put in profiles, but we don't have any click to pay or pay to play models within our site. So every solution that you find on there is completely discoverable organically, and no one has paid us for an insertion or to be on the website. So you can search with confidence and also filter on a number of different criteria to find the procurement software solution that you're looking for in less time than it takes to boil an egg, because it's confusing enough out there in the market as it is without having to figure out what each of these solutions do. So you can just filter on what you want to find by subcategory, solution size, or the market that they go after in terms of enterprise, mid-market, or SME. So Ryan, over to you. If you want to just quickly introduce yourself while we're waiting for maybe a couple of latecomers to come and join us, and then we'll jump straight into the demo. So tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do at Forestreet, and then we'll jump into the demo itself.
Yeah, thank you, James, and good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Ryan. I'm I'm the business development manager at Forestreet. We've designed a solution to find and map out every supplier within any market in a number of minutes, sort of shortening that cycle that is typical with most traditional methods. So yeah, really intrigued and want to show you the platform and how it can be utilized, and some of the interesting features that you can use within procurement to sort of shorten that sort of cycle and sourcing strategy.
So it can be used then essentially for both supplier discovery as well as doing competitor analysis on an existing supplier, right? So if you've got an existing incumbent vendor and you perhaps want to look at who else you could include in a potential benchmarking or tendering exercise, it also does that too.
Correct, yeah. So exactly that. There's a number of use cases from actually understanding the market, understanding the players within the market, the trends, innovation, sort of movers and shakers. So you can compare that to your current incumbents, actually, absolutely. And it also can be used for in situations where perhaps you don't understand the market at all as a new market, to understand what's happening very, very quickly.
Fantastic. Okay, so before we go over to the demo, just a couple of quick housekeeping tips for anyone that's watching this on LinkedIn Live. If you have a question, then just pop your question into the comments below this stream and we will flash them up on the screen, and I will ask Ryan those questions while he's presenting if you have anything that jumps into your mind while we're mid-presentation. We will also send you a link to access the recording of this, and we will also publish it on YouTube as well. If you look in YouTube, James Meads, my channel is on my personal name, not procurementsoftware.site, then we have a playlist for all of the previous software demos that we've done. So in about a week from now, we'll have this one uploaded on there too. So yeah, that's it. Over to you, Ryan. If you want me to present anything, just flash it up on the screen and I'll bring it up onto the stream.
Awesome. Yeah, so let me present. I've just got a few slides, and then also I'll jump straight into the platform, but initially to sort of set the scene, let me just sort of share my screen here.
There we go.
Awesome. So to set the scene then as to why we're here, we were established really when our two co-founders saw a gap within the market where traditional market intelligence was a little bit broken. A very manual sort of human-led approach where the options were quite limited. There's you've got your typical desktop research, so using a search engine, as we know, this is a business model sort of built around the seller's need, not the buyer's need. There's review websites, so list providers essentially, but this is often not a full picture of the market, and is fairly often skewed by sponsorship. The companies with the biggest marketing budget typically rise to the top, and you miss out on all the great potential suppliers that you could be working with.
And that's a great point, actually, Ryan, because with procurement software, we see that as well with the likes of G2, Capterra, GetApp, all of these sort of software discovery sites. The ones that pay the most are the ones that appear at the top of the searches, just like on Google and Amazon.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's also sort of more consultancy based that supply sort of expensive opinion, but actually from our experiences, they're all doing it in the same way. Sort of recycled reports, desktop research, etc. So our founders wanted to create a tool that sort of bypassed all that bias, augmented analytics with analysts or procurement teams, and put that into the hands of companies to quickly be able to map out entire categories and have access to those insights and innovation themselves. So the platform itself, there are two phases. You've got market study or market discovery, where we go out to the web and we look in real time at all companies within a market of your choosing. And then you sort of start to train the algorithm as to whether you think those companies are relevant to you. And then there's the analysis phase, which is much more automated, where we web scrape. We buy a bunch of data for those included companies to allow you to interrogate that market based on your requirements. So today I'm going to show you a Forestreet study on procurement software, an area I'm sure you're all very familiar with, to show you essentially how you can develop a deep understanding of that market, and then I'll go back and show you exactly how I got to that point. But just to highlight, it can be really used for anything. So it could be used for tech, for services, for commodities. It doesn't really matter. The process is the same. So this is a market I built on procurement software, and I've categorized it out into a number of different subcategories. So spend management, P2P, contract management, supplier discovery, all the way down to sort of commodity prediction. And now I'm no expert in procurement software like you, James, but it gave me a very broad overview of the whole market very, very quickly. And we've got some top line information on all of these companies within this market. So when they were founded, the size of the company, their revenue, where they're located. We also provide a bit of our own analysis, so this momentum score. And this momentum score is you can consider it a growth prediction. So it's a quarter by quarter review from a number of data points such as sentiment, web traffic, media analysis, funding, revenue estimate, to give us an idea of not only who are the big players in this market, we know who they are, but perhaps who are the small, more emerging players who have got a very good product offering. They're being spoken about in a very good way by the media. Maybe they've just recently taken on some funding, to give us an idea of who are the ones we want to sort of keep an eye out for, who are the new emerging players within this space. We're also going to get some additional information, so the competitors and the similarity score of each company, feature architecture, as we call it, which I'll touch on in a bit more detail. This can be built out by us depending on our requirements, and then some news and events. So that's how we can view at a company level, but also we can see news and events more a market level as well if we wanted to. So now we actually bias towards more recent news and prioritize the more credible news sources. So there's not going to be any sort of Hello Magazine, Mark Zuckerberg fashion fails, but we will be able to look at a company level to see perhaps if there's any risk attached. And in this case, we can see sort of Icertis winning a number of awards. That's great news for us. We can also see any company changes within this news and events engine here as well that may affect the direction of the business, which is really useful to know. But additionally, we can learn a bit more about the market. So we can do a keyword search for the important things for us, and it could be sort of risk, it could be acquisitions, mergers. We want to know what's happening within this market, and sort of cut through that noise and see what direction it's going in, and the important themes. So we can also use it as a way to identify sort of success stories, and sort of validation testimonials, and we'll show you good or bad, to give us an indication as to, okay, is this company, they're talking about themselves in a great way, but how do they look across within the media? Sort of going back to the list view then, now we can divide this market based on this top level information. So the headquarters, size, etc., things that are important to us. But we can also explore this market in a bit more detail using our analysis tools. So we have this widget, phrase explorer, and feature architecture. But what that is our NLP scans every web page for the companies within this market and indexes the language they're using. And this is valuable in two ways. It can offer up, so if I want to find something on, let's say, contract management, that's what's important to me as a business. It can offer up similar or related words. So contract management software, we can see it's offering up a number of different similar words to contract management software, to give us an understanding of the market. So we can see here we've got a CLM, and now that may not seem valuable to you who already know the software procurement software space already, but if this is a market that I have no understanding of, that's a really valuable insight. But also it allows us to filter based on so it allows us to basically identify the companies that will meet our requirements in the best possible way. So if I were to select that contract management, it's then refined that list from 175 companies to 87 that meet that specific requirement. So the death of the ERFI, as one of our clients called it. We can actually build out a more robust, so because it's offering a number of different alternatives, we can see that people are talking about this in very different ways. So you've got contract management, we've also got managing contracts. We can build out a more robust, what we call feature architecture based on this. And we can start to cluster those words together to ensure we're capturing all of the companies that are talking about what's important to us. So let's say, for example, contract management is something we're trying to identify, but also we need to have an integration with SAP. We can build out this feature architecture in a few minutes to refine that list down even further. So again, now we're looking at 37 companies rather than 157. Cool. So this is obviously looking at the way the company are talking about themselves, and it can be for a number of different reasons. We could be looking at important features, we could be looking at integrations, we could be looking at sort of security, as you can see here, or even more ESG related or sustainability related topics. But of course, this is going off what the company is saying about themselves. So actually what we've done is built an ESG module that allows us to essentially gives us a view on how the market is talking about these companies. So it's very difficult to get an ESG related view on privately held businesses. So this ESG function gives us a signal. It's not an exact science, but it gives us a signal.
Not much with ESG is it? That's the problem.
that is the problem, yeah. So it gives us a signal as to at market level or at company level, sort of an ESG score for anyone in this study. And how it works is through millions of targeted web searches, we can identify ESG related phrases within articles linked to companies within this study, and those are then mapped to categories within either E, S, or G, and then using sentiment analysis, we can give it a positive or negative score. So as you can see, This is what it looks like. This is beta, this is brand new. But we've got the sort of categories within environmental, social, governance. We can search via a specific company if that's of interest, or actually we can see maybe there's a particular focus for us. So it could be around waste management, or it could be around diverse supplier, whatever it is, to give us an insight and indication into a comparison between companies within this market. Great. So I want to now show you sort of how we got to this point, and how we identified all these companies and how quick and easy it can be. So how we do that is a simple search. Now, we will use a seed company. So these can be your incumbents. These can be companies that you already have a bit of insight into, or you can just do a simple Google search to find some. But it's the foundation of the search is a domain-based seed company search. So I've picked 3 fairly broad companies in here. We've got Ariba, Procurement, and Jagger. If we don't know any companies within a market, of course, we can do sort of a bulk keyword search. We can focus the tool on a specific region, country, or area, to sort of top level domain. And actually, I'm just going to reduce the number of results it returns just for speed's sake. But then when we hit go, we are now, the system is looking at each seed company and identifying similar companies across the web. So it's important to note that we don't use any pre-existing data sets. We're using a domain search and an algorithm, sort of 37 different search methods. So audience overlap is one of those. So as a user of one of these web pages, where do you go to afterwards? Does that bear any relevance? We look at the company's use of words.
That's interesting. So, sorry, Ryan, I was just going to ask you. So it's not a web scraping tool then. Essentially, it's much more advanced than that in terms of how you pull. Using the example here from procurement software, if you take Ariba, Jagger, and I can't remember the other one you mentioned, and pulled them all into that search, which is a pretty good example actually, because typically the average head of procurement or center of excellence manager is going to know perhaps 3-4 of the well-known procurement software brands. So it's then about how do you diversify that search then to cast the net as wide as possible. And then, as you said, then to sort of drill down based on individual needs to as you say, do your RFI out of the box.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not just as straightforward as a web scrape. We want to make sure the results that are coming back are as relevant as possible. So we look at inorganic and organic search. We look at that audience overlap piece. We do a web scrape. We sort of look at how the companies are describing themselves on their web pages to find any overlaps between other companies out there available on the web.
That must be fun with procurement software, because they all describe. It's often difficult to figure out what these companies bloody do half the time. Their websites are described that badly. I mean, at least with commodities manufacturers, it's easier to figure out what they make, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very true. It's very true. But that's sort of the beauty of this. This market.
That's a great example there. What the bloody hell's autonomous commerce?
Yeah,
Speak English.
I know. It's just sort of a word salad, isn't it? Just jumbling a bunch of words together and make it sound good. But yeah, this is the market discovery. This is our algorithm training view. And we've got the companies to review on the left-hand side. The 3 seed companies that I chucked in have already been included. We embed the company webpage within the platform, so you can do that review process fairly straightforward without having to leave the site. And then it's just a case of sort of going through and reviewing the relevancy of these companies with it just an include or exclude. So you can see we can start to build up some that you're seeing sort of like for like, so exact comparisons to our seed companies, but it's also going to show you any sort of adjacents, anything that it thinks is slightly similar but maybe doing something in a slightly different way. And that's how we'll identify the innovation. That's how we spot trends and new companies that we may not already be aware of. So we can go through and include this, include the ones that are relevant, disclude the ones that are not relevant, and we can also, because there's quite a broad search, of course, we can start to categorize and sort of chop up this market at this point as well, so by adding categories. So for example, these guys, Medius, have a focus on accounts payable, so we can put AP software and give that tag. And as we find more companies like this that are focused on AP software, here's another one, for example, AP software.
Basware. I was going to say Basware is very much focused in that, whereas the other ones that you flagged up, what was it, Cooper, Procurify, iValuer, Procuro to some extent, they're all sort of procure to pay or source to pay platforms, whereas Basware is more on the APs. I mean, I know this just from memory, but yeah, for someone that's discovering, it's good to see that how they can filter those which might be directly relevant versus those which have some degree of overlap.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what we can then do is, let's say the system then sort of identifies that adjacent within the market, in this instance, AP automation software. If that's interesting to us, we can then drill down further and say, oh, actually, we want to learn more about this subsection of the market. So we can say, all right, let's find more based on included, but actually we want to base it on the category that we've just tagged. So any company that's got that AP software tag is then going to use that as the foundation for the next search, and that's how you can build a full overview of any sort of ecosystem. And then we hit add companies, and it'll sort of run that again. I'm not really going to over egg the pudding. I'm not going to go through all of these. I think we've given a sort of good insight into how it works and the type of companies, sort of the relevancy of the companies that you're pulling back. Of course, I'll be more than happy to, if anyone is interested in having a look at a more sort of pertinent example, maybe an area that they're struggling with, and a new category or a new market that they're exploring, then I'd be more than happy to do it on a sort of a more personal one-to-one level where we can map it out in real time for them.
Perfect. So just one question from my side, Ryan, and thank you for that. That's really, really useful to get a pretty broad overview of what it can do. I'm going to ask maybe or make an obvious statement, but it's not to challenge you. It's really just to contextualize everything. So, procurement software is typically a one-off purchase, and it's usually, in the case of procurement software, I know I run a business that does it. There are websites out there that you can go out and find that type of stuff relatively easily. Whereas if you're trying to source some very technical mechanical component, and you're perhaps, I don't know, looking for nearshoring your supply base, if you're in Europe, maybe to Turkey, or if you're in the US, maybe to Mexico, and you don't want to hire a consultancy to do that, that's really where I think a platform like this comes into its own, because, relative to, I don't know your pricing structure, but I'm guessing relative to what it would cost to buy that software, to buy Forestreet as an enterprise, what you'd spend per year for procurement software may not necessarily give you ROI on that. So while it's a great example that everyone's familiar with to demonstrate what the platform can do, it would be good, perhaps not necessarily in the demo, but just to explore perhaps how a couple of other, high risk, high volume, high spend categories could really come into their own through this, particularly perhaps in the manufacturing environment.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's also a sort of a consideration around where those manufacturing environments, there's a lot of risk involved, and suppliers are often letting people down, or there's perhaps a crisis or some sort of natural disaster. This tool can also be used as a sort of a crisis management tool, which is what a number of our clients actually have used it for in the past, where they don't know anyone else in that market, in that area. They want to quickly map out that maybe it's a specific geography for a new supplier, and exactly that our tool can help. It can sort of identify everyone within that market of interest within a matter of minutes.
How many events typically do you see that your clients would need to, or scenarios would they need to run through this usually to see ROI? Because there's always then the obvious obvious sort of challenge to this would be, well, if it's just a one-off instance, then I can go and source a consultant or a subject matter expert to do that research for me. If I pick a real, in-depth subject matter interim manager to run that sub project. So I assume it would need to, it would need to be a pretty large business that would get value from this.
So yes, obviously those businesses with sort of large, complex supply chains, there's a lot of value to be had with a tool like this. There's also a lot of value to be had around sort of horizon scanning, so making sure you're always aware of the latest innovation, the latest trends to ensure you're one step ahead of your competition. But it only takes sort of one crisis or one issue for you to immediately see the value. And then there's a sort of a land and expand where you can start to use us for a number of other different use cases. So sort of your competitor analysis, your go-to-market strategies, your sourcing new suppliers, of course, your market knowledge of or crisis management, risk evaluation, your month or your yearly category reviews. So there's a number of different use cases, I suppose.
It's also great for, if you've got a really experienced procurement category manager in your team that retires or perhaps leaves the company after 15, 20 years of managing the same category. That's a real, in-depth expert, and you've got to bring someone in that's maybe a recent graduate or that's only got 3 or 4 years experience in procurement. They're pretty big shoes to fill, aren't they? And I think you're only gonna be able to do that with the help of tools like this, because while it will never replace the in-depth technical category knowledge, at least it should be able to replace the knowledge of who the supply base is in that person's head that's recently left the business in that case. And I think that's where these type of tools really come into play, especially given that, over the next 5, 10, 15 years, we're going to see a lot of very experienced procurement people retiring that have got 30 plus years of experience. And just by pure demographics, at least in North America and Western Europe, you've not got that pipeline of young talent that's going to be able to fill that instantly.
Yeah, it's a really good point, James. We quite often see that sort of siloed knowledge, that siloed information, where it might be someone who's very senior that has all the information, all the experience, and it often sort of bottlenecks a lot of processes because they're having to go to that senior. Even now, eventually they'll leave and that will be an issue, but even now, sort of that information is sort of bottlenecking a lot of processes. They'll have to go and speak to them and understand who are, okay, so we've just had an issue with our one supplier, who else can we go to? And they're actually looking to sort of Forestreet as sort of a succinct way to store all their current suppliers, but also map a sort of a long tail of all other potential suppliers. And what I didn't show was there's ways that you can add custom columns and tags, so you can ensure that this is our primary supplier, this is our secondary supplier, these we've got a certain relationship with, put the contact details in to make sure all that information is up to date, and you can then run refreshes on a monthly basis, go back in, see who's dropped in, who's fallen out, to keep that supplier information up to date.
That's interesting. So a lot of the typical consumer productivity app features are in there then as well. If I'm thinking things like Asana and Monday and Airtable with tagging and filters and that type of thing. So it's almost like a mini. Well, it's not CRM, is it? It's not customers, but a supplier relationship management tool that you can use it for as well. Interesting. So over to the audience. If anyone's watching this live and has a question, type it in the comment box now. If we don't have any questions, then we'll close out in a couple of minutes. But just last call, if anyone has any questions from Ryan, pop them in the comments. I'll flash them up on the screen and we'll answer those now. Otherwise, if we don't have anything come in, we'll close this out and send anyone that signed up the link to watch the recording if they had to drop off halfway through. It doesn't look like we've had anything come in, Ryan, so I think we can probably close out. Before we do, if anyone wants to find out any more about Forestreet, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you other than the website? Is it LinkedIn or email, or do you want to just let everyone know where they can find you?
Yeah, of course, Ryan Brown on LinkedIn, or they can give me an email, rbrown@forestreet.com. We'd be happy to help. Or yeah, there's a number of different ways you can reach out to us on our website as well.
Fantastic. Okay, Ryan, awesome. Thank you very much for the demo. Great that you took procurement software as an example, so as I could see what's going to maybe replace me in a few years' time, albeit somewhat more expensive than using us.
Never replace.
But
Always
yeah,
augment.
awesome to see what it can do. And I've seen a couple of demos of this, and I think it's great. It's anything that can make our lives easier and not have to rely on static data is really an accelerator that can help procurement grow and spend our time on things that we should be doing, rather than just spending time rummaging around trying to get information and data on stuff that's already out there. So cheers, Ryan. All the best. Take care. And thank you, everyone, for watching. Wishing you the rest of your day is nice and sunny wherever you are. Take care and bye for now.
Thanks. Bye.